Good morning, Willie, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you and to everybody who is watching us.
We start this new year with another episode of Wesley and Willy, Season 3, Second Thought Reflections on News and Current Affairs. And me and Willie decided to dedicate this episode for reviewing some of the most important events of last year, in our opinion. And I think me and Willie agree that the most important event of last year so far, is the Ukrainian war. What do you have to say about this, Willie?
I think, it's evident that the war is still the most significant world event in its capacity and influence and consequences. I can tell you we feel it here in Europe, maybe more than America. Uh, we feel slow economic growth, the inflation, uh, the rise in the cost of living is horrendous. Uh, Therefore, and the like you read now in newspapers, you read articles about students that are hungry, houses that are cold because people cannot afford to pay their energy bill. So yes, it is. The war is having huge consequences on Europe, and well, the worst part is that it hasn't finished yet, and the consequences could be more substantial than what we are facing now. Uh, and what's sad about it, from my perspective, is that nobody is talking about political solution. It's almost a year now, and nobody is saying anything about that, and that's very sad. I mean, we all know that after whatever the end is, it has to be through political venues. Yet nobody is talking about it, as if as if lots of countries, lots of companies, corporations are benefiting from this war and wanted to continue on. Let's hope that this year we'll see the end of this war. Uh, there are 16 million refugees, Ukrainian refugees, and added to about the same number of, maybe a bit less, Syrian refugees. So the whole world is facing catastrophic, catastrophic events due to the war in Syria and Ukraine. And we sense it here in Europe. There is a scheme now in the UK that every house that hosts a Ukrainian refugee can get, I think, 400 from the government. But the scheme is not going well because the influx of refugees is so large that they cannot accommodate to the number. So yes, we live in the horrendous consequences of this war, and we wish that this year will see the end.
That's the thing about America is it makes us unsensitive to or insensitive to wars. Is that we are an island that is hundreds of miles away from any other land, and we usually wars do not have a direct effect on us, except in a positive economical sense, because we are the bomb makers. So what you just told me is just like was an enlightening because I haven't thought of that. We do not have any effect of the Ukrainian war on our daily life, but you do, and Europe has also suffered the Syrian war directly. It hasn't recovered yet from it Italy. So it is even worse to suffer another the consequences of another war next to it.
Correct. Uh, well, yes, it's not the first war since the World War II, because there have been wars in Chechnya, in Kosovo, in Bosnia, yes, but the capacity of this war is enormous. I don't think it's like anything we've seen in the last few decades. And I think the consequences will keep unfolding throughout the years to come. So, yeah, let's hope we see the end of it. I just
Is
want
there
to,
any
like,
initiatives? I mean, there was the
no, no,
Mecca.
no, nobody is talking about anything.
Hmm.
I think, okay, from my point of view, I think that the the money military complex, the U.S. money military complex, is benefiting a lot from exporting arms, selling arms,
Yeah,
and I
$40
think,
billion worth of aid.
yeah. So as long as these corporations are making money, they will lobby the government not to seek a political end. And as I said, nobody's talking about political talks, which all wars end up doing that. But nobody's talking about anything like that. And this is the sad part of it. Uh, and I think Zelensky is being used as a puppet by the West. He's just doing whatever they want him to do. And well, they want now they make him. They made a hero of him. And I'm not surprised if he is nominated later on to be a Nobel laureate. But from my point of view, he's
For
been
what? For peace? I mean,
yes, yes,
he's he's being celebrated as a resistant fighter. I
yes,
don't think you
exactly.
can get a Nobel Peace Prize for that.
Well, I mean, what's his name? The Israeli Prime Minister. He got one.
Yeah, but after signing the
Perez.
peace treaty.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
after Zelensky does that, maybe he'll be
maybe
nominated.
they'll sign a peace treaty. I mean, I feel like Putin is ready now for such a thing.
Yeah, he's been calling for political talks since day one, but there is no serious reply from the other side.
Stinzaf, it's
Yes,
just
yes,
a war of draining Russia.
exactly.
The
So
busier
so
it is in the Ukraine, the less it's going to be intrusive to other countries.
yes, so basically the Cold War has turned into a hot war using Ukraine against Russia instead of the main like the U.S. and Russia fighting against each other, and they're using their like Ukraine to do that. And he's fallen into this. Zelensky is fallen into it. Because after all, who's losing? Like the whole country is being destroyed. So there's
Ukraine, yes,
only one country. Yeah, there's only
the
one country
cost is
which
very
paying the
high.
price. The Ukraine. The infrastructure has been destroyed.
Yeah.
Uh,
Excuse me.
I
Coming from
I
us
want to
keeping
highlight something before you move on to another topic. I want to highlight something that probably nobody is. Well, people are not. These news have been marginalized, maybe in the news. It's about the moving of Latin America to the left. Let me just like before 2017, most of the countries in Latin America were ruled by like center to center right parties. After 2018, let me just count you these countries. 2018 added to Cuba, Mexico, Argentina, Bolivia, Peru, Chile, Colombia, Honduras, and Brazil. They all now have democratic or socialist center, left or left parties in power. So I think we are seeing the end of the unipolar world, and I think that the sentiment of the people is shifting away from the politics of capitalism, the politics of the elite and oligarchs, which who manipulate resources, and I think the sentiment is leaning towards more social paradigm of government. Do you agree with me?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so we don't live in a unipolar world anymore, especially with the rise of China and now Russia. So, and it's not also bipolar; it's a tripolar world: Russia, China, and the U.S.
Um, these trends, if you're talking about left and right, they are themselves existing, coexisting in the United States. When we talk about power that can be a polarizing power, it has to be a comprehensive power that can actually uh, um,
Well,
convince.
I think that was even manifested in the midterm elections when the Democratic Party, did not lose the way everybody expected. So yes,
Right.
even though
Like
some,
winning the presidential election,
yeah,
and then the midterms is a sign that the government perhaps will not change to red during the next elections, which is an indication of the pull to the left, especially by the younger generations in the United States. But what I'm saying is what you've indicated happening in Latin America and South America is in itself a trend that is happening within the United States. But it is all within that system that balances between free market capitalism and a social net that protects the weakest and the most unprivileged in society. So a system that can balance between these two is a power that is not much like it in the world, and it's a model to be emulated. Like if a country wants to become successful, it would not emulate the Chinese or Russian model. It would emulate the British or French or German or American or Canadian models. It is not seen as a successful model. The Chinese, who are now having, very strong against they're having a strong protest against their strategy in dealing with the COVID-19 lockdowns. Their strategy, imagine a country of 1.5 billion with all access to science, because of this unilateral authoritarian strategies, they caused so much havoc in the country. For example, I'll give you an example. In Michigan, our governor, she cannot do whatever she wants. What her personal convictions, her party's convictions, she can't just carry it over. And Michigan was balanced by the representation in government. I don't think that's something that is possible in China, and that's why China remains as not a source of inspiration, and that's why when I talk about polarization, I know this the point we have a difference about is that I don't see that there is other uh, competitive truly powers to the West in the world. Unfortunately, I mean, it would be nice to have a positive competition to the better.
I I don't necessarily agree. I mean, I not 100%. I disagree on some points, like thinking that the Western liberal democratic model is the most perfect in the world, and everything else has has to follow suit to, to attain perfection. I don't agree with that. Uh, from what I've seen in many cities, in many universities, almost one third, maybe to one half of all the foreign students are Chinese. That is an indication of a rising middle class. Because those students, talking about hundreds of thousands and maybe tens of thousands in Western universities, all are Chinese. Now, those represent a rising middle class Chinese people who can send their students to learn in Western universities. And yet, all of these students end up going back to China because they never think about getting naturalized in the West. They don't care. For them, going back to China is the ultimate goal. So they are happy in their country. They don't think that the West can offer them a better living status. Now, probably because we live in the West, we think that the Western model is the best in the world. I don't think they agree with us. I don't think the Chinese people agree with us. Uh, yes, there is, of course, everywhere in the world there is corruption, but China is not among the most corrupt country in the world at all. There is transparency in the political process, which gave away a very large middle class, and that's a very very.
By the way, I have on the screen, Walid, a graph that shows the number of Chinese students in the United States. It's about 320,000 in 2021.
Students,
Yes,
300,000.
320,000. Yep.
And you know that like nearly all of them end going back to China. They end up going back to China. They don't stay in the West. They don't care about staying. They don't think it's better to stay there. No. So probably we think that yes, the West can provide the best living model, but they don't think so. I wanna, if you permit me, I wanna move on a little bit to Lebanon briefly.
Mhm.
As everybody knows, Lebanon is facing like the most severest crisis that we ever faced in the history of Lebanon. Yeah, they are the most devastating crisis in probably in the modern history. The port explosion, the huge inflation, and the decreasing of the market of the lira. Uh, yet, we, in the last year, we did not see consolidating power to face up to these catastrophes. But what we saw is more polarizing in the politics, more maybe sectarianism. And now what we have is a total stalemate situation in which there is a caretaker government taking care of things in the very narrow sense of the word, because a caretaker government cannot do much. And we don't have a president, and we don't know where we're going. And now they're talking about a change of maybe the constitution, a change of the whole structure of the country. So the country is open to all. So God forbid that anything major could happen, but I don't see any solution in the near future. What's your intake about Lebanon? Especially that I know that you are from a Taghyiriyin, which split into three or four themselves. So they did not live up to the dreams of the Lebanese people.
Yeah. Can you mute yourself when you're not talking? So
Yeah.
just yeah. So Yeah, as far I agree with you as far as living, or I can do the muting with it. I'll just do it myself.
Okay.
I agree with you as far as the Lebanese reflection. We are in a stalemate. I have no foreseen solution, and people around me that I've asked that have experience in politics, they also don't see any solution in the horizon. Actually, parliamentarians themselves don't see, the ones that have the ability to propose solutions in the parliament do not see solutions in the horizon. As far as the uh, parliament bloc of التغيير, the change bloc, the revolutionary bloc, the revolution has converted into a political movement that has produced about 14 to 17 parliamentary members. These, yes, I was involved in trying to facilitate and encourage to have some sort of secretariat for this 14 members. And we even offered that it will be funded by the expatriates around the world. But they do not have agreement on even that, always it's free. Herding free thinkers is like herding cats. So when you talk about the totalitarian parties, excuse me, that's the good thing. I mean, that's the strength of a party, is that you have its manifesto and people work under its manifesto, no matter what their personal opinions are. We know, me and you, that a lot of members of like Amal or whichever party, they have personal opinions that might be far from the policies of their party, but when it comes to representing the party, they stick to it. That's something that the revolutionary members could not give up some of their ideals to lie under a larger umbrella. They could not do that. They just have some certain ideals that they could not give up. They were not pragmatic enough. And I was shocked to that, because as a politician, you should be able to do that. That's the definition of politics. The definition of politics is that you give up 80% of your values to push 20% further. You cannot expect 80% of your values to be the 80% adopted by a larger group. If you're not pragmatic enough for that, you cannot work. Like I was, as you know, I was with the revolution. I was against 50% of its actions on the streets personally, but I was still with it because I want the other 50% to go through. But they don't have that pragmatism, and I can tell you they failed in that. The good thing is that they are free thinkers. This is actually the pure represent, like, this is how parliaments should be at a naive state, right? Like, there should be that each member has his own opinion, but that doesn't work in politics, and they failed to really create a general secretary. So I'm not sure if that time, that the stalemate will give them more time to find their common grounds and work together. They've succeeded in issuing a lot of statements, as a group, but and their small number does not really matter if they're together or not. It's not really going to matter a lot. So they actually see more benefit in being true to their values and convictions than actually being in a group, because the group is too small to be effective anyway. But I think in the next elections, I expect to have, I mean, in this elections, I expected like 3 to 10. So we exceeded expectations. And in the next elections, I expect 50 to 60. And unless there is like a game that is done. But if that happens, then it is a considerable block. Anyway, I want to also say, let me unmute you. Go ahead, Willie.
When you say 50 to 60, I can only call it wishful thinking. Yes, we all want to see 50, maybe more, but this is not going to happen, right?
No, it's impossible.
You think it's possible?
I think it's impossible in the sense that the parties won't allow it. Like, so they'll burn the country before that happens.
Oh, that is.
But technically, it should be. Technically, it's possible.
I know. Even these 13, more than half of them have affiliation with the local parties, and they voted for them. They wouldn't have won if they were running just by themselves. And I can give you names. And that's why there's split now, because they have different affiliation.
No, it's not because of
So
affiliations, because of convictions. They don't have
convictions.
affiliations. They don't have
Yeah.
affiliations. Yes, they have
Yeah, it's.
tendencies. That's not
I mean,
natural.
it's hidden affiliation.
I don't know. Now, if it's hidden, it's hidden on me. So, okay. Moving on for reflections on 2022. So we agree that Ukraine war is the most important event in 2022. If you want to pick other couple events,
Uh, let's end up. Uh, let's end up with Iran. Anyway,
Iran.
well, we have different views on Iran, and so we're going to keep it
Uh-huh.
as simple as possible. I was watching. What's her name? Gadi Francis. I like this journalist.
Hmm.
She said a couple of days ago. She said she's considered to be pro uh, March 8th.
Mhm.
She's Syria for me, but she's objective. She's not biased. So what she said, what's going on in Iran? She went to Iran a few times, and she's like pro, as I said, the 8th of March. She said that what's going on in Iran is less than a revolution and more than like social mobility. So it's something in between. I sort of agree with her. Uh, uh, yes, I think. Well, that does not that does not change my view that Mahsa Amini was used as a publicity stunt to further certain agenda. But let's agree that what the regime is facing is the most significant challenge to the stability. And excuse me, I don't want to say regime, but the government. Because when I say regime, that means that means that they, to parentheses, they succeeded in brainwashing me. It's not a regime, it's the government. So it is the most challenging to the stability of the government. Uh, we saw throughout the last month sporadic street protests, which turned into riots. Uh, those riots damaged public institution, public transportation. We saw this in the news. Uh, now, uh, they the slogan that were raised, they called for toppling the regime because the regime is against the freedom of women. The regime is corrupted. That's what they said. When we know, even the World Bank report states that Iran is the, even though it is facing the most severest sanctions in the world, yes, in the last 2 years, there was economic growth in Iran. Uh, so those calls about political repression, corruption, and mismanagement of the economy are just used by what one Iranian politician said. He said that uh, the whole the whole thing, the whole protest, the whole riots, whatever you want to call it, is financed by Saudi regime, marketed by the British media, and orchestrated by the Mossad. This is how he put it. Uh,
I have to disagree with
most whatever.
with most what you said, uh, and that wasn't simple. You wanted to mention it simply. Mention it simply is like what you said. It is more than a movement. It's less than a revolution. It has continued further than the expectations of anyone, and it had more influence than the expectation of everyone. And the government has conceded in many cases, and in other cases, it has, there's over 500 deaths so far by the government forces. That's other than the executions that took place. I don't see an end to that without a root change in the system. I feel that the Iranian people are different from like the Arabs or Lebanese. They have a very long breath. They have very long, they have patience and the skin for their perseverance during revolutions is amazing. The amount of poetry and art and music that accompanies the revolution, and every single Iranian in the world is reacting and working with it. It's
Are you
just
talking?
impressive.
Are you talking about the '79 revolution?
Exactly. It's the this revolution is very similar to the 79 revolution.
So,
It even has some religious tones. Like even religious people in Iran are joining the revolution, and there's some religious tone to it.
so
And
it's a revolution again, the revolution. But let me just point out something that you agree with. I think you agree with me on that. The Iranian constitution was voted on by liberals, trade unionists, by leftists, by communists, by capitalists, and it won about 97% of approval.
yeah,
That was
but
back.
I mean,
So it's not
the
a regime. It's not a regime. It is a
no, it
government.
has nothing to do. Regime has nothing to do with the constitution. Lebanese constitution is a beautiful constitution. The revolution is actually to implement the constitution. The American constitution is great, but the American practice sometimes is it's anti-American.
Yes,
So
yes. But let me just ask you. In December 2022, there was a coup d'état in Germany. You remember that? Everybody was talking about it. Like
2022.
yeah, like in December last year. Last year was it December or September? I can't remember. There was a coup in Germany where a right group was trying to topple the government.
I haven't heard of it.
Yes. So
Okay.
it was a far right, and they called it terrorist group, allegedly they planned a coup d'etat in Germany. That's what they called it.
Mhm.
Now, they never called Germany a regime, and and they never called these people dissident. They called them terrorists. In comparison, in Iran, they are dissident, political dissident, against a regime, not against government. So yes, there is a big duality in stating the facts in these two countries, just because Iran is Iran and the West is the West.
No, I mean
Uh,
it's not like a small party with a special belief. It's masses of people in every single city. Plus, it
it's
has
basically,
combined.
basically, if you narrow down, all these riots were happening in Baluchistan and Sistan, in the provinces Sistan and Baluchistan, which are, and I'm sorry to say that, which are about 85% Sunnis, which have this province has lots of influence from Saudi Arabia, and most of the riots were happening there, not in Tehran, not in like Asfahan.
That's not accurate. The revolution was in Tabriz, in Tehran, and Asfahan, in the universities, in high schools, and
Sporadic
everywhere.
protests in the streets, not like major. There were not like major protests. We did not see it. We saw
because
the major. Yeah.
the clashes were more severe. The government is racist when it comes to these areas, to Kurdistan and Baluchistan and the Ahwar of Ta'ab, and they use more live.
Okay. Let me tell you a fact why I think we are brainwashed and we are being fed information to think in a different way and to act in a different way. Just let me give you an example.
Mhm.
You know, a couple of weeks ago, the electronic flies, and for those who maybe are confused about the term, electronic flies are a few people who use the same post and then post it over and over in a short period of time to send a certain message, political message. So they create this post and we post it so many times in a short period of time. So this electronic flies, we're talking about the uh, mass execution by the Iranian government. Am I still on?
Yes.
Okay. They were talking about mass execution against the dissident by the Iranian government, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let me tell you something. I'm going to read this from the ABC, the NBC website, and it's very brief. This is what it said. The NBC website. A false claim that Iran plans to execute thousands of people has gone viral in the wake of the first death sentence for a protester tied to the demonstrations against the country's clerical rulers over women's rights. They said that an image has circulated widely on social media falsely.
Yeah.
Said
This is
15,
I agree with
that's
you.
what it says, but let me just finish it. 15,000 protesters have been sentenced to death. This is what it said. And this
No,
is the NBC News. But let me just finish up
nobody
with something.
believes that. Nobody believes that.
It was viral. It was viral. And every,
It's but I
okay,
haven't seen it in the
okay,
there is about 450 executions this year. Not all of them are related to.
okay. Can I ask you just one question? Just one question. How many executions, you know, how many executions, state executions took place in Saudi Arabia in 2022 against prisoners of conscience? How many?
81.
147,
Mhm.
and it was condemned by all human rights.
Okay, good.
But
Yeah.
nobody talked about it. Nobody
No,
talked
I
because
mean, it
nobody,
depends. Okay,
because
depends
it's not
what
the
you're looking.
target.
No,
Because
it
Saudi
depends what
Arabia
you're
is not
looking.
the target, but Iran
Depends
is.
what you're looking for. Like saying nobody talked about it is, you have to show statistics about presence in the media, but this is not, I mean, like for example, if you're talking about Amnesty International, they have an office that deals with each country, so all countries are dealt with equally. As far as the Iran protests, Iranians, they care about the Iran protests, they don't care about Saudi.
No, I'm talking about
So they can,
social media, with the
yeah,
social media.
the Iranians are very active on social media and they're fighting for their country, and there has been over 3,000 arrests. This is the map I'm showing you on the screen of all the protests that took place in the first few days. And itself, like in 5 days, you can see that they are all over the country, and that's 5 days.
What's the blue? What's the blue? The blue shaded,
The blue shaded, whereas I
like
don't see
in the north and in the south.
that's the Gulf, and that's the sea.
Okay.
So anyway, our topic is not really Iran, but we agree, both of us, that what's happening in Iran is a major event in 2022, and we both agree that
Yes.
we
Well,
both agree that we wish it didn't happen.
no, and furthermore, I think lots of change should take place in Iran. Lots of change, and they're not doing any critical summarized reading to their last 30 or 40 years, and they should do that.
Yeah,
So no stagnation is good forever. Change is
and I
good.
agree with
So
you on that. And I'm worried with you also that the change to be politicized and used by external countries It might be something that some Iranians like, but I don't like. For Iran to be another foreign country in the region, and to create, because I understand the anti-Islam that is coming out of post-revolution Iran if it continues. But what I'm worried about is an anti-Arab sentiment that comes with that. So I was hoping that the government would be wiser, and it would,
Well, they
actually,
are. I mean, they're not enforcing the hijab anymore, and they canceled the morality police. And
yeah,
the
it was little late, unfortunately.
well, I mean, they did that, and they should
Yeah, it
they
was
should be
late. It was
they should be appraised for that.
after they failed in suppressing the protest.
Fine, they should be praised.
Yeah, I mean, no, not after that, not after killing 500 people. Then you're basically have no options. But
Rioters, not people, rioters.
hijab
They didn't.
hijab was hijab was canceled by the people, whether the government liked or not. Even the last, like the chess player, she played without hijab, like all the athletes, it just was something that is very impressive, really, from the Iranian people. But we hope for the best for Iran. We hope peace for it. We hope that the government will also have wisdom in incorporating the new voices and the new vision of Iran. And me and you agree that Islam allows for that, but they're more hardliners than us. And I think these are two major events of 2022, plus the World Cup, which was a major event in its own way.
We talked
And
about it, I think, last time. Yeah.
yes, we talked about, there's so much more to talk about, but that's, we've addressed it last time. I think, Willie, we wanted to end a little bit earlier today. We are at about 45 minutes now. So it's a good time to end this episode. Happy New Year again. Uh,
Thank you, Wesley. Thank you. Happy New Year to you, and wish you the
we,
best in this year.
you too. And we would love to maybe speak about a little bit about our trip to East Sussex, to the countryside
Yeah, we'll do
next.
that next week. Yeah,
Yeah, because we
yeah,
haven't done that really, me and you. I have reflected on the trip with many friends, but I haven't with you, and the trip was with you. So it
yeah.
would be lovely to do that. Thank you, and
Hopefully,
have
yes.
a great rest of your
Thank you.
day.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.